Everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at the SwampFox 6 to 24 by 50. This is a first focal plane scope, and we're going to be focusing a lot on this sharpshooter mill grid that they give us. Okay, so first focal plane. It kind of has to be first focal plane when you're dealing with this much magnification. All right, so. See as I zoom in and out, zoom you guys in and out. So I'm going to be using these dolls here that are about 12 inches tall, and I find that they are very useful because they're proportionate to a human, and basically it gives you a chance to see what you would be seeing, if you were in a combat type of situation. Okay, so I think I have found this to be a very useful tool. Okay, so the first thing we're going to concern ourselves with is range estimating. Okay, because we have to be able to range estimate. So let's start with this guy over here. All right, so we've got Thor over here. Let's adjust for parallax. Okay, so. So let's see. We're gonna go ahead to. We're gonna put the horizontal stadia line at his feet. Now he's a little bit in the snow, so I'm gonna go just a little bit below, and I see that he's about I'm gonna say 3.5 mils with his feet in the snow. Okay, so 3.5 mils. Let me check my notes. And anytime you're doing this kind of work with this type of scope, yeah, you're gonna have notes. Some people will paste it onto the side of their rifle. So 3.5 mils, 3.5 mils. He's at about 600 yards. Okay, so he's at about 600 yards. Let me get back on target here. 600 yards. So if I was shooting this person here. Right, who's a combatant at 600 yards. Again, referencing my notes to see what my holdover would be. At 600 yards, I need a 5 mil holdover. Okay, so there's two ways I can do this. If I need to take a shot off really quickly, I can basically move down to the 5 right there. Now, right now, it seems easy because we're not in a stressful type of situation, but basically it forces me to go to the bottom of this grid, and you're not going to be able to just splash. So a lot of times you're just going to want to zoom back a little bit, so at least this way if you miss you can see the splash. Okay, and what would I say, it was a 5 mil hold, so I would hold for 5 mils there. Now if I had a little bit more time, that would be right there, right? Bang bang bang. Okay, now if I had a little bit more time, what I would prefer to do would be to dial up. Okay, so basically I would dial up 5 mils. You guys can hear me clicking now. 5 mils. So if I dial up 5 mils, okay, lost him. There it is. Okay, so now I would put the crosshairs right on his chest. And I would go bang, bang, bang. Okay. So now one of the things that I've come to realize with the way these crosshairs come up, when I put the crosshairs on a human-like target, right, that's usually dressed dark, I kind of lose track of where that center is. All right. So like it's kind of hard for me to sometimes figure out where those crosshairs meet. And we're going to be comparing this to the Primary Arms ACSS and solution that they have, and you guys can kind of draw your own conclusion. But that's one of the problems I have found. It's kind of hard for me to see exactly where those crosshairs meet. Okay, so from there, since I've dialed up 5 mils, bang, 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 and then I'm observing for splashes. And if I see it splashes, on one of the dots below, basically you just move that dot to the target. So if I see if it splashes 1 mil down and 1 mil to the right, I take that dot, I transition it to the target, and I take my shots. Okay, so that's how this reticle is designed to be used. Now, I've dialed up 5 mils. You always want to dial back, right? Because if you don't dial back, you know you're gonna get confused. So I need to dial back. Now this does not have a zero stop, which I have found to be extremely useful. So I have to basically look up at the turret and make sure I bring it to the right position. And one of the things I have found is a lot more convenient if there's a zero stop. That's one of the things I was not aware, that this scope did not have a zero stop. Now, I'm aware that they have other versions. They got the Kentucky and they got the Warhawk. Oh, let me zoom back. They have other versions of scopes that do have those features. But what I was looking for specifically here is I was looking for a light scope. So this is the reason why I picked this scope versus the other scopes, because I was trying to get a light scope to go on an AR-15. So on this AR with the scope, because the scope and mount, they came in like at 2 pounds 14 ounces. So this AR right now weighs 8 pounds 13 ounces. Okay, now compared to, let's say, my AR-10, which has the Primary Arms 5 to 25 by 56, that one weighs in at like 12 pounds. Okay, so that's what we're trying to get at it. So there's no question, if you got a bigger gun with a bigger scope, you're going to be able to do more, and that's great if you're going to be like stationary, right? If you're doing like if you're going to be, it's great, let's say, for a garrison gun. But if you're going to be moving around and need to get to a position, and so that you can cover a long range, like over here we're looking at 700 yards, right, based on what we measured out, you're going to need a lighter gun. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to get out of this. So let's zoom back. Let's come to actually closer. Let's look at this guy over here. Let's do a parallax adjustment. Yeah, anytime you got a scope with a parallax adjustment, you kind of have to use it. All right, so now we're back at the 6 magnification. So we see this guy's clearly. So hold on, let me zoom out a little bit so you guys can see. So one of the things I have found, if you look at the top side of the horizontal stadia line, right? Let me go. Hold on. So let me go to Batman over here, right? So you guys see where that 6 is, right? Right now it's at Batman's head. So basically, if a man is more than 6 mils, they're going to be inside of 300 yards. Okay, so if I got Batman here, like he's clearly less than 6 mils, so he's well inside of 300 yards. So again, I would put the dot or the crosshairs on his chest, start banging away. Again, I'm having an issue here with, it's kind of hard to see where the crosshairs meet in this system that they gave us over here. Okay, now, yeah, granted he's dark, but remember, most combatants are going to be wearing dark clothes unless they're up like in Antarctica or Alaska in the wintertime or something. Okay, so let's go back to this guy over here. Where's my guy? So I got a red dot here to help me get on target. It's really convenient. So I got this guy here. Zoom up. Do parallax adjustment. Yeah, he's definitely more than 6 mils. So he's like much closer than that. So same deal. Put the crosshairs on his chest. Bang, 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 bang. Okay. So let's go a little further out. So we're searching for a guy. There's a guy right there. Let's zoom in, do a parallax adjustment. So if you guys see, like, I'm constantly doing these parallax adjustment. This is like one of the benefits of like an LPVO. LPVO does not have a parallax adjustment, and that's one less thing that you have to be constantly dealing with. Okay, so let's take a look at this guy. Let's zoom in. So this guy over here. Yeah, so this guy is less than 6, so he's good. He's definitely further away than 600, than 300 yards. So we gotta take a little time. We can't just put the crosshairs on this guy and start banging. So let's mill this guy out. Again, we can't see all the way to the bottom of his feet, but we can kind of guess where they are. Where are you? So he's at about 5 mils. No. Yeah, he's at about 5 mils. So 5 mils. Check my notes here. 5 mils, 400 yards. Okay, now the other thing, let's say we couldn't see this guy all the way down to his feet. We could also mill him from the belt to the head. All right, so he's about 2.5 mils from belt to head. So we could just double that, and that would give us 5 mils. So that's the other way that we can mill this guy. Okay, so we said he's 5 mils. 5 mils puts him. No, hold on. 5 mils puts him at 400 yards. So referencing my notes, at 400 yards, basically I'd be using the 2 mil holdover, right? So 400 yards, 2 mil. That's right here. Bang, bang, bang. Okay, so this is probably a small enough adjustment that I wouldn't bother dialing up on this. I would just go right there, because even if I zoom up, go right there. And if I see some splash to the left or to the right, you know, I got enough room on this grid that I can make a quick, easy adjustment. Okay, let's dial back a little bit. So also one of the things I want you guys to look is look at the detail that you see, because remember, this is a human size proportionally. So at 400 yards, we can see his eyes, right? We can see the details. Let's say on his chest armor, we can see his abs over there. So that kind of gives you an idea of what you're going to be able to see with this type of a scope. So at 400 yards, we can definitely identify this person, you know. Okay, let's zoom back a little bit. Let's go back. Actually, let's go up here. Got a guy up here. This guy's kind of camouflaged a little bit. Zoom in a little bit. So we got this guy, do a parallax adjustment. That's a good image right there. So this guy's at about 4 mils. Okay, so 4 mils, he's at 500 yards. Okay, so my holdover for 500 yards is 3 mils. Okay, so 3 mils. So basically I would go down to the 3, start popping my shots there, or I could dial up 3 mils on a turn. Okay, let's dial back. So again, you can kind of see some detail in his face over there at 500 yards. Let's dial back. Let's go to this guy over here. Okay, so do a parallax adjustment. All right, so you guys can see the star on his chest, the red and white stripes. So clearly that is Captain America over there. All right, so let's see, what are we looking at here? Let's mill this guy out. 2, he's at about 3 mils. 3 mils is 700 yards, okay? So that's what, let's get back on target. 700 yards. So that is what a man's going to look like at 700 yards if he's just like standing out in the open. Okay, so the holdover for 700 yards is 7. Okay, so here's the thing with the first focal plane scope, right? Unless I dial back, you're not even going to be able to see the 7 on this mill grid. So I have to dial back, or I would have to dial up. Okay, so with this, let's say at 700 yards, you know, we got to definitely take our time with this shot. So I'm going to dial up. So as I spin this turret, it goes up to 5, 6, and then it goes back around to 1. Okay, so it can get a little confusing once you go past 6 mils on your dial up, because now you're gone all the way around. So now I'm at the 1 position. Okay. So let's use, again, I'm using the red dot to find my spot, because I don't want to have to zoom back down. So the red dot kind of gets me in the ballpark over there. All right, so now that I have dialed up the 7 mils, I'm going to put the crosshairs on his chest. Okay. Let's do this. Let's dial back for a second. Oh, shit. See the wind over there and the wind ribbon? So we got the wind blowing left to right for at least 3 to 5 miles per hour. Okay. And I don't have notes on what the hold would be for with the wind hold would be at 700 yards. I'm gonna guess that it's gonna be at least 3, maybe 4. Let's go. Probably 3. Maybe let's go 3.5. So that's what the wind correction. So right there, that would be my whole pew 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 right there. Now, if we can spot the splash, like for example, if we see that it falls on because what's the spot there? We're holding on 3 right there, pew pew pew. Oh no, 3.5 we said right there, pew pew pew. But if we see that it falls on 2.5, right, then I would just transition the, if we see a splash at 2.5, I would just transition the 2.5 to the target. Okay. So this is what's involved with making shots at this distance. The wind, what I found is the wind does. See, right now the wind stopped. Before it was blowing, the wind changes from minute to minute. So what I have found is like the best you can do is just make some kind of an estimate on the wind. Like before we said 3.5 mils, and take your shots and try to spot the splash. And then wherever it splashes, transition that to the target. So let's go a little further back. All right, we've got there. So with Captain America, like I said, we can see the detail there. We might not be able to see his face so clearly, but we can see the star, we can see the stripes. Do a parallax adjustment right there, yeah. So that's what you're going to see at about 700 yards. So let's go Spider-Man behind him. So with Spider-Man, we can clearly see, let's see how far away he is. So we're going to mill out Spider-Man. He's at about 3 mils. So 3 mils, checking my notes. Man at 3 mils. So let me take another look at this guy, because the other guy was at 3 mils. Let's get a target. Said this guy was 3 mils, right? Yeah, but he was in the snow, so we had to kind of guess. Let's take another look at Spider-Man. You can see the very bottom of his foot. Yeah, we got him at 3 mils, so I think we might have been off on Captain America earlier. So, but that's the reality, because you're not going to be always able to see. That's why the mill grid is so important. You need to be able to see something so that you can spot splashes and make corrections, because you're not always going to be able to range estimate. So we got this guy. Okay, same deal. If he's at 700 yards, the holdover is 7. So we would dial up for 7. Put the crosshairs on this target, and then adjust for wind. Let's see, the wind ribbon's moving. No, the wind ribbons aren't moving. So I would just go hold center, pew pew pew, and what we're really looking for is the splash. So we go pew, see where the splash is, and then transition that to the target. Okay. So that's what you can expect to see. That's what a man's going to look like at 700 to 800 yards. Okay, and that's the level of detail that you can see with this 24 power scope. I can kind of see I can see his socks. I can actually make out his ab muscles. Okay. Now, you gotta remember to always dial back down, because otherwise the next time you go to shoot this gun, especially in an emergency situation, you might be totally off. So it'd be nice if this. So far my complaints with this particular scope. Let me dial back down. I wish it had the 0 stop. Okay, I wish it had the 0 stop. And also I'm having eye box issues. Okay. Because it's a 30 millimeter tube, if my head is just a little bit off left or right, I'm seeing a shadow. Now, right now I'm looking through this benched, but especially if you're out in the field in a prone position and you're slightly uncomfortable. I mean, and I mean, even with like 34 millimeter tube scopes, I mean, a lot of times you end up seeing a lot of shadow. It takes effort to try and get to try to get your head in the right position. So with a 30 millimeter tube, it's gonna be harder, and I'm already seeing some of the difficulties here. So those are two, not my complaints, but those are like the compromises, right? What we achieved with this scope is we have a light scope that can go on an AR-15, and we can see all the way out to like 700-800 yards, and we can see some detail, and we can range estimate. Now, by the way, why are we range estimating this way? Why are we not just using a range finder? Well, here's the thing: if you try to send out a laser beam, it's going to bounce off of that tree right there, right? You're not going to be able to get a laser, because I have range finders, right? If you're working in the woods, the rangefinder never gives you a reading on the thing that you want to see. It's going to give you a reading on the closest thing, because the beam does spread out as it goes out there a little bit. Okay, so that's why we have to be able to mill based on the size of a man. Okay, so yeah, I wish this had a zero stop. I'm having some eye box issues with this. But as far as the reticle, okay, what we don't have here is we don't have like a ranging ladder, because a lot of scopes have ranging ladders where you can, like, it's usually up here on the side of the glass here or over here, or sometimes they'll put it at the top, where you can quickly range estimate based on the size of a man. Now, there's two ways to look at it. Some people will say that's like excess BS, because like the reality is that you're probably never going to be aiming this gun at a real person. Okay, so that's one of the arguments I have heard against auto ranging ladders, that you're never actually going to be shooting. Most likely, you're never going to actually be shooting at a person. Even if you're hunting, you're not going to be shooting at a person, right? So my thinking on that is that, like, even if you're hunting, because I do a lot of medieval combat. And in medieval times, one of the reasons why, like, knights and lords used to love hunting so much is because it prepared them for war. Okay, so my thing is, anytime we're shooting, okay, we should be using the same types of tools that would be useful in war. Okay, so those are the two arguments for and against. I mean, one argument against it is that you're never going to be, pointing your gun at a man at 700 yards. And my thing is that, hey, I mean, that's, even though it's not likely we're going to be doing that, that's what we're supposed to be training for. Okay, so that's why I think it should have a ranging ladder. So you can see some good detail. You can see the buttons on Thor's armor over there, right? And we said this guy was at about 600 yards. So yeah, a ranging ladder would be very useful. One of the criteria for buying this scope is that it had to have a mill grid. I have found the mill grids, with the Christmas tree, reticles, very useful for picking up splashes and being able to transition that dot to the target. But one of the things I'm finding with this reticle, though, is because of this design, especially if you're putting the crosshairs on something dark, it's hard to see where they meet. So that's one of my complaints with this reticle design. Number one, it should have a ranging ladder, and number two, it is kind of hard to see where those crosshairs meet. Primary Arms uses a chevron. I'm gonna show you guys what that looks like on the same target, same day, same lighting conditions. So I'm gonna give me a second. Let me hook up the other scope, and you guys can take a look at that. All right, well, now we are comparing the. We're looking at the Primary Arms Griffin grid. So I've got this dude here. Let's do a parallax adjustment. So I like that they got these dark lines here. So even in like a CQB, if you had to use a scope, you can kind of, you can use those outer posts to get you to the center. So I like those posts that come in. So we got this guy here. So here they give us this ranging ladder that you would put at his feet, and clearly see he's like way closer than 400 yards. So I would just put the crosshairs here and start blasting. So if you look on this system, like even if I'm there, like one of the things we're going to be paying attention to is like how easy is it to follow the crosshairs to the center. Okay, let's get a little further back. Let's get the Batman over here. So same thing, let's see if we can range estimate him. Do a parallax adjustment. So yeah, he's way closer than 400 yards. Right, so basically same deal. Put the crosshairs on his chest and go start blasting. Boom, boom, boom. Let's go a little further out. Let's go to this guy here. Okay, this is where it starts to get interesting. Lost my place. Okay, hold on. There it is. Okay. So let's use that ranging ladder. Put it near his feet. So yeah, he's at about 400 yards. So that saves us a lot of trouble of trying to look up our notes to see what distance is at. So he's at 400 yards. 400 yards, I already got it memorized. That's 2 mils. Put the 2 on his chest at 400 yards, start blasting. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. So let me zoom in a little bit so you guys can see the detail. You can see his face. You can see his abs. So that's what a man looks at 400 yards. Let's get a little further out. So we got this guy. This guy's kind of camouflaged. Get the parallax. There it is. No, parallax, not right. So let's see, he's at 500 yards, right? So we put the horizontal stadial line on his feet. His head comes up to the 5. That also matches up to the width of his shoulders, right? So he's at 500 yards. So the holdover is 3 mils. I lost my guy. So that would be 3 mils right there. Pew, 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 pew right there. Okay, let's go a little further back. All right, so we got Thor. Okay, this is where it starts getting really interesting. Okay, so you guys can see the details now. So here's the thing, even though this is like a 34 millimeter tube, I mean, we were able to see some good detail on Thor earlier, right? So I think where that bigger objective lens really makes a difference is like when in low light conditions. All right, so same thing. Let's do a range estimate on this guy. He's at about 600. Probably a little bit more. Because remember, we can't see. Let's see if we do this guy from the belt up. Yeah, no. So I think the best that we're going to do, because one of the ways that we can range estimate these guys is half the man. Here, let me come back a little bit. Come back to this guy, right? So with this guy, we do a parallax adjustment. So from the belt up, right? So he comes up to the 800 yards. So I would just divide that in 2, and he's now at 400 yards. Okay, so that's easy, right? I know, put 2 mils on him, bang, bang, bang. Now, I kind of wish that what they would do is like you got the full man ranging ladder on this side. They should do the half man ranging ladder on the other side. That would be perfect. But anyway, let's go back to Thor. So we ranged him at about 600 yards. Now, I don't remember what the holdover is for 600 yards. I got to check my notes on that. So like the 400, 500, like up to 500, you got to have that memorized. 600 yards, you got to have some notes. So my holdover for 600 yards is 5 mils. Okay. So basically, yeah, that's kind of low. And see, it's really hard to work. So it's really, once you start getting to the bottom of this grid, it's really hard to work there, especially if you're like in a prone position and under stress. I mean, it's just hard to. So that's why we dial up. So I'm gonna dial up 5 mils right there. Right now, I put the cross that chevron on his chest and start banging. Pew pew pew. Yeah, I'm all the way up. So I think that chevron, like the way this chevron system is, I think that's a bit easier because I can actually see the chevron against his dark armor versus the other system before where they just had a dot in the center and the thin lines leading up to it. Okay, let's go to this guy here. So same thing, we're going to use the ranging ladder. He's at about 650. 600, 650, somewhere around there. 600, so same deal. We're holding 5 mils, so we're not going to change. If anything, he's definitely a little further back, so what I would do is I would probably hold on his neck. Like, hold a little bit more towards his neck. Start banging. Pew, pew, pew. And the same deal, we're looking for splashes, and then we can move that dot. Wherever we see the splash, we can move that dot to the target. All right, let's go to Spider-Man. Yeah, he's at about 700 yards. 700 yards, my holdover 7 mils. So I'm going to spin this up to the 7. And I'm going to get the chevron on his target. And yeah, that chevron is definitely a lot easier to work with. Put down his chest. Pew, pew, pew. So let's take a second and look at some of the detail that we can see here, right? Now, I actually think that the other scope before gave us more magnification. Like Spider-Man, his eyes looked big, even though the SwampFox only went up to 24 magnification and this one goes up to 25. His eyes looked bigger in the SwampFox when it was at 24. So I think that either, like, I don't know how. I don't know how you're gonna reason this, but he definitely looked bigger when you look at the details of his eyes in the SwampFox. But even though it had less magnification, that was a 24 power versus a 25. Okay, so let's look at Captain America. I can actually make out his ears over here. I don't recall if I could see his ears earlier, but yeah, I can see the star, I can see the stripes. Okay, so again, we said that this guy is at about 600. Okay, and we got Thor over there. He's at about 600. All right, so there's a little comparison for you guys, but I'm finding that the chevron's a little bit easier to work with, especially when you're on a dark target where it stands out a little bit more versus a dot. Now, if you're on something that's bright or like that guy, you can use that tip as a fine aiming point. All right, so some things for you guys to consider, think about. So I'm going to give you guys some afterthoughts after that exercise that we just worked our way through. So here we got the SwampFox 6 to 24. This is the Patriot, and if your priority is a lighter scope, yeah, this is definitely lighter. Okay, so scope and mount, it came in at like 1 pound 14 ounces, just under 2 pounds. So that is like like the max weight I think I would want to put on AR-15. Okay, so this one over here, the Primary Arms 5 to 25 with the mount, this thing comes in at 2.5 pounds. So this is good for an AR-10. It's a little bit too heavy for an AR-15. Okay, but I mean, for one thing, like if you hold this and you kind of like rotate it to the side, this is better balanced. When I had this scope on an AR-15, it was just top heavy. Okay, but for the some of the compromises. Okay, number one, there's no illumination on this, which is fine. The SwampFox has no illumination. I really don't use the illumination that much on this one. If I'm going to use it, it's going to be either at dusk or dawn. And a lot of times, even when I'm using it, it overwhelms the target, like even at dusk or dawn. And so I end up not using the illumination. So that was like, I don't mind not having the illumination. One of the things that happens with this is, a lot of times I go to adjust the parallax and I grab the illumination, or I go to adjust the illumination and I grab the parallax. So these two, sometimes I get confused with those two. Okay, so so that's one of the things to be aware of if you've got illumination next to your parallax adjustment. And we're going to keep fussing with that parallax with these type of scopes. Every time you change your magnification, you have to adjust your parallax. I mean, it's like a constant balance back and forth. Okay. The diopter on the back, you're only going to adjust that once to your eye. One of the complaints I had on the SwampFox is I think the diopter in the back is a little bit on the too loose side. It probably should have been a little bit stiffer, especially for something that you're not going to use that often. Okay, the magnification adjustment is good on both of these. It's very similar. No issues on the magnification adjustment. The turrets, okay. I wish that this had a zero stop. Okay, the zero stop is really important, because especially as we're dialing up, you want to be able to come back and just come back to your zero. Come back to your zero and have this thing stop, so you don't get lost. So without even looking at it, I can dial up and I can just come back down, and I know I'm, with this one over here, you have to spend more time looking at it. And it's a lot easier to get lost. There are these little lines in here that can kind of help you find your spot, because this, if you look at this, let me get back to the zero. Okay, this only goes up to about 6. Like a full turn is like a 6 mil rotation, right? Or one rotation is 6 mils. And if you look at my notes here, a lot of times we're dialing up 7 and 9. So what that means is you're going to go around more than once. So it's really easy to get lost and be like, okay, where am I? So you got these little lines over here that can kind of help you come back to that zero. Okay, so that's one of the things you're gonna have to pay attention. I can't even see it from this angle over here. There it is, right there. You can see that little zero there. So I'm gonna match that up to the zero. All right, I'm back at my zero over there. Now this zero and the line over there doesn't match up perfectly. There's a little bit of mush. Not a big deal. From what you guys saw when we were out there looking at those targets and trying to mill targets and trying to get a holdover, we're not dealing with exact numbers here, right? So a lot of times people make a big deal out of this thing is like the zero doesn't match up perfectly. In practical use, that's not a big deal. A lot of times these scopes, they give them like these fine, like 0.01 mil measurements and 0.02 mil measurements. Practically speaking, if you're trying to mill somebody or something at distance, you're not going to go to 0.01 and 0.02. You're going to go like the most you're going to go to is a half, maybe a quarter, okay? But you're not going to go to 0.01, 0.02. So I think with a lot of these scopes, they spend too much time trying to give you these really fine measurements, and it's just not practical for realistic shooting in a combat situation where you gotta get your shots off pretty fast. Okay, so one of the things let's talk about the turrets. Like this one over here, you see this has a much bigger, fatter turret, which means that you can go 10 mils all the way around. Okay, so with this one, you can only go 6 all the way around. So this is a lot easier to work with. Of course, it's bigger, adds more weight to the gun. So yeah, I was perfectly willing to compromise on that. It's just that the compromise would have been a lot easier if this had that zero stop. Okay, so yeah, so you're gonna end up going past your zero on this, like when you're spinning around. So if you're trying to go up like 8 mils, you're gonna go like basically go all the way around, and you're going to end up like on a 2 position or something. Okay, so that can get more confusing. Okay, But now one of the issues I had with this is when I tried to piggyback the optic on top, this is too big. That's why I kind of put it at the offset position over here, right? Because I can kind of see between the turns. Because otherwise, this was really high. I had to lift my head way up. And a lot of times if I was in the prone position, that just became completely unworkable. So I have it set to my left side. So I'm shooting, basically my right eye looks through here. And then I'll wink my left eye if I want to look in here. And then wink the left eye to come back over here. So I use my left eye here, right eye here. I set this one up the same way over here. Even though these are shorter, the system works for me. Now this mount is a little bit too high. I ordered another mount that's a little bit lower than that. So if you're gonna get an offset mount or a piggyback mount, you want the low rise mount. You don't want the tall one like the one I have here, right? Because that's just too tall. So that's not going to work on this. I mean, it works, but I mean, you can get away with the low rise, and it's also less weight. Okay. So I think I covered most of the things. The other thing is eye box. That's the other thing. That's the eye box. Like with this is with the 34 millimeter tube, a lot more generous. This 30 millimeter over here, yeah, I mean, I did find myself, a lot of times, like I was looking in there and all I was seeing is shadow. So especially not so bad if you're like benched, but if you get into a prone position, that eye box really makes a big difference, right? When you're in a prone position or in an unconventional type, or a less comfortable position. Okay, so a couple of things for you guys to think about, and also here's my notes with as far as your down here. I've got basically at different yardages. Over here I have the full height of a man. Here I have the size of his chest going across, because you can also mill him across the chest. Okay, and then up here I got my holdovers. Oh, and actually I do have the wind holes here as well. So yeah, I kind of guessed it right at about. No, actually, we said he was at 700. Yeah, I should have held at 2 instead of like closer to 2 versus 3. So I forgot that I actually had notes over here. So yeah, these are your these are for 5 mile/hour wind. Right. So drop some comments below. Let me know what you guys think. Talk to you all soon.